did hear the cookout.
Yeah. Oh, Lord.
Thank you. It is Tuesday, September 27th. It is 12:34. All the board members are present. Mr. Callahan, welcome back, Mr. Talley. Mr. Polakowski, Mr. Trotter, Mr. Braun, the quorum is present. The minutes of our meeting of August 17th have been sent to everyone. Does the board have a motion? So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions or corrections? Hearing none on the vote, Mr. Callahan?
Yes.
Mr. Pally?
I will recuse myself since I was not here.
Thank you. Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mr. Trotter?
Yes.
Everyone votes yes, the motion carries. Lori, I'll turn it over to you.
I'm actually going to ask if I can take one item out of
Sure.
order. Just so that Mitch is official, I was thinking we should pass the resolution updating our slate of officers and also the governance, audit, and finance committees. So the only change to the slate of officers. we're
Hello? I'm sorry, can you guys hear me?
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, you couldn't hear me before, thank you.
Records show that Mr. Grucci has joined the meeting.
Do you need a motion to?
To add Mitch to the slate of officers. Thank you,
All
Gary.
right, I make the motion.
For a second,
Second.
any questions?
I'm sorry.
Mitch was with us a number of times, as you probably know, probably last somewhere around 2005. So on the call,
Marty made the second?
No.
Frank made the second. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Callahan,
Yes.
Mr. Grucci,
Yes,
Mr. Polakowski,
Yes.
Mr. Trotter.
Yes.
Everyone votes yes, motion carries.
Okay, and then
Welcome aboard. Thank you.
we also appoint everyone, and Mitch was just added as a member. We also appoint everybody to our governance, audit, and finance committees. So you'll be on all of those committees.
Okay.
Do we have a motion?
So move.
Marty?
Second, Gary, questions? On the vote, Mr. Callahan,
Yes.
Mr. Grucci,
yes,
Mr. Polakowski,
Yes.
Mr. Trotter.
Yes.
The Braun votes yes, the motion carries. Now, Lori?
Yes, please, thank you.
Okay,
Sorry.
You're up,
that's
Laura.
okay. Included in your package is the operating results for LDC year-to-date through July. For the month of July, the only activity I want to mention as far as revenue goes is there was some back Mather Hospital fees that we collected for admin fees for the earlier years, as was pointed out during our audit. As far as all the other expenditures, we pretty much on target, although year-to-date we're at a loss and we did project a loss. Is there any questions on the operating report, July versus actual year-to-date, the LDC? Okay, the next item I want to mention is insurance. Our LDC policies expire October 1st, so we procured almost the same coverage, less than a 3% increase for our excess D&O, including EPLI, and also for our regular D&O insurance. So overall, insurance costs remain at minor increase 3%. Any questions on that? Okay, next item, I want to read something to you, just standard language. All payroll taxes have been paid in accordance with federal and state guidelines. All regulatory reports have been filed on a timely fashion. All state regulatory payments have been made in accordance with state guidelines in a timely fashion. Last item I want to mention, and we'll talk about this, well, two more items, is the budget. We're working on the budget. I've included a rough draft of the budget. It's due the end of October, but in your package, I gave a draft of what I foresee the LDC budget is at. We don't have anything in the hopper, any future projects that we see, not that we're not expecting them, but we haven't budgeted for anything other than our recurring annual fees on the projects we have and a little of interest income. One thing I want to add, which ties into the budget, is we relooked at the shared service agreement between the IDA and the LDC. And we looked at the the amount of efforts needed, and we're looking at possibly, and I'm presenting it now for your consideration, and this wouldn't take effect till January 1st, is changing the rates at which we allocate costs between the IDA and LDC. So for example, currently in the marketing and events, all for except Mr. Shapiro's company, we allocate 50-50 between IDA and LDC. We're looking to change that to 25 LDC, 75 IDA. Office supplies, we're currently, that includes like our Wi-Fi, our rent, and other recurring expenditures. We were charging 75 to the IDA, 25 to the LDC. We're looking at January 1st to revise that to 15% LDC, 85 to IDA. And lastly, for Todd Shapiro's firm, we're currently allocating 75 to IDA, 25 to the LDC. We're looking at changing that 85% to IDA and 15% to LDC. So the budget I presented considers us changing those amounts. It's not significant, but it's enough that should be noted on the LDC. It will help close the gap, and more accurately, it was the first time we had a shared service agreement at 1/1/22, and having and seeing the level of efforts, we've been able to more align what we feel the percentages should be considered for the next year.
So
So,
Lori said the formal budget needs to be adopted. We'll do that at our October meeting, but if you, based on today's conversation and what's been sent to you, if you have any questions between now and the October meeting, please give Lisa or Lori a call. Try to answer any of your questions at that time. I do need a motion to accept our report.
So moved, Gary.
Thank you. Second,
Second, Mark Callahan.
on the vote, Mr. Callahan,
Yes.
Mr. Grucci,
Yes.
Mr. Pally,
Yes.
Billikowski,
Yes.
Mr. Trotta,
Yes.
one vote yes, motion carried.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is a resolution for Mather Hospital. Bill, do you want to just let the board know about this?
Sure. So in 2012 and 2013, the LDC issued bonds on behalf of Mather Hospital. They asked us to make some technical amendments to the bond documents in connection with some covenants. So really has to do with the fact that debt service coverage ratio this current year, which would kick in, was the 2013 bonds, even though about 2043 at mandatory tender and marketing next year, it would actually look like they were coming due. So instead of clarify that, there's a couple other technical changes that the bank and the hospital requested, and they're going to want to with the consensus. It does not impact the bonds or the LDC agreement.
Did they do that because of the merger?
No, it just
Just nothing
happened.
to do with the merger, okay.
I don't know if that's a full asset merger yet or not.
Well, it's got the name all over.
Yes, it do, and spending some money.
Yep.
Motion, please.
So moved.
Thank you. Second, right?
Yes.
On the vote, Mr. Trotta,
Yes.
Mr. Billikowski,
Yes.
Mr. Pally,
Yes.
Mr. Grucci. Mr. Grucci? Mr. Callahan?
Yes.
The board votes yes, the motion carried.
Sorry, I was muted. I'm a voter. My vote is yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. The next item on the agenda, we took out of order a little bit, just welcoming Mitch to the board. So
My
welcome again.
pleasure. Pleasure to be back.
After that, the last item that's on, the next item on the agenda is the job creation numbers. So to remind everybody, at the end of the year, we send each of our projects an annual report that they have to report back, a whole host of things. And one of the things that they report back to us is their job creation. And we had some LDC projects that did not meet their job creation. There was actually 2 of them. And when we presented all that to the board a few months ago, you asked Fred and I to follow up with each of the companies and get an explanation and review everything. And Fred and I did, we received responses from everyone, their explanations for why they didn't meet the job creation numbers were acceptable and in line, and so we're just sort of following up with that and letting you know that we did reach out to everyone and we found everything to be appropriate.
So is excuse me, is the responses that you received temporarily delaying those numbers from reaching the goals that they need to?
Much of the response that we got was COVID related. I
COVID
don't think that's gonna surprise anyone. There was mention, I don't know in these two in the LDC if there were supply chain issues, specifically more so in the IDA, but I think that they will reach the job creation numbers. I just think that everybody is feeling the realities of what's gone on in the world, and they were responsive to our requests. Everything was sent in a timely fashion and well articulated.
So when would be the next time that they would report?
So we send the reports to them in December. They're back to us, I think, by February, early February, first week
So
of
so the
February.
next one we will get is February 23.
Yes, but it reflects on this current
Right,
year. Yes,
With the
So-
Paris report due March 31st.
yes.
Yes.
So we asked for it at that time period, so we have time to process everything,
Right.
clarify everything, get it into Paris.
So we'll have a clearer picture at that point
Right.
as to what their each situation.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
And the projects have not been chronically problematic.
Yeah.
At all.
I mean, these are trying times with related to, so.
So that's an update for everyone on the job creation numbers. And the last item on the agenda, although it shows like it's two items, but it's the corrective action plan as a result of the Office of State Controller audit. Mitch, just to let you know, our LDC was one of the first LDCs to get audited after the State Controller's Office got the ability to audit LDCs. So that was lucky for us. And out of that audit came three main findings. And as a result of those findings, they asked that we put in what's called a CAP, a corrective action plan. And basically, they just want us to outline what we're doing about the findings. So our findings were, just so everybody has it, the first was that they wanted us to develop and adopt a written policy that establishes procedures for approving and monitoring projects. So that's in process, something that we're working on and tweaking. It's a little bit awkward because we don't have a new project coming in. If we had a new project coming in, I'd be able to tweak it in real time, but we're doing it. Obviously, it's a procedure, so it'll be a work in progress, but we're putting something together to fulfill that requirement or that recommendation. The next one was ensure staff collects all required fees and consider recouping uncollected fees. Well, the board directed us to go back to the one project that there was outstanding fees. We requested the outstanding fees be sent in. They did so in a timely manner. We deposited it and we went through our system to ensure that there's that nothing gets missed. I can't say we can ensure that nothing. Do our best to make sure that nothing gets missed in the future. So that was the second, and that's my basic response on that. And the last one, the last recommendation is to ensure authorizing resolutions include clear and measurable goals so that officials can determine whether projects are meeting the intended purposes. And again, this one's a little bit hard, like they want a timeline on when you're going to do these. This one we can't do until we get another project in, but I explained that once we get another project in, we will work with council to make sure that the resolutions and the documents have goals that are, I think, clear and measurable. Was there clear and measurable? That's their expression.
Rich,
So-
there are some here that would argue that what we have done up to this point was perfect,
Right.
including council, but they want more specificity, and we will do that. for
Well, the
future
clear
projects.
and measurable goals from an LDC standpoint are not just job creation numbers, because otherwise we'd be talking about IDAs and not LDCs. So you have to figure out what the goals are gonna be of the project in a much more subjective nature than objective. It's gonna create X amount of jobs.
That's not acceptable to them.
Yes, and one of the things we did explain to them is that, you know, again, you're saying you're in a hospital.
Right.
That the hospital is central to the community. All the information they were looking for is in the official statement that's issued in budget.
Right.
This mailing the budget. The LDC approves that because it's the LDC's document. And all that information is required by federal securities laws.
Right.
To be updated every year. And we explained that to them, and they didn't think that was sufficient. So they think they trump federal securities laws and the federal tax laws. Their infinite wisdom. You'll deal with it.
Right. Well, and it's much easier dealing in a new project than it is going back to an old project and saying, here were your goals for the last 10 years.
It actually is in all the other projects.
Right.
I mean, they have the obligation to update that information.
Right.
And send it to the LDC every year.
Okay.
So,
All right.
everything they asked for is already in the documents. They just need to do more with it.
Okay.
So that's our corrective action plan, which will be sent in, I think it's due in 2 weeks, so we can have something like that. It'll be in more timely fashion.
I think that's it for Lisa's report, unless anybody has anything else to discuss in the LDC, or can motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Mr. Trotter?
Marty Callahan.
On the
Thank you,
vote,
Frank. Thank you, Marty.
on the vote, Mr. Callahan,
Yes.
Mr. Grucci,
Yes.
Ali,
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski,
Yes.
Mr. Trotter.
Yes.
One votes yes, and we are adjourned. Thank you. We will now move into the meeting for the Industrial Development Agency. It's Tuesday, September 27th. It is exactly 12:50. Following board members are present. Mr. Callahan, Mr. Grucci via Zoom, Mr. Pally, Mr. Polakowski, Mr. Trotter, and Mr. Braun. Minutes of our meeting of August 17th have been sent, excuse me, quorum is present. I have to conclude that. Minutes of our meeting of August 17th have been sent to everyone. Have a motion to accept those? So moved. Thank you, Gary. Second,
Oh, second, Marty Callahan.
thank you, Mr. Callahan. On the vote, Mr. Trotter,
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski,
Yes.
Mr. Pally.
Recuse myself.
Yes, sir. Mr. Grucci,
Yes.
Callahan.
Yes.
Mr. Braun votes yes. Minutes are accepted.
I'm gonna take this out of order again. Thank you. So just like in the LDC, I'm gonna move the slate of officers and the governance audit and finance committees resolutions up so that we officially welcome Mitch. The first one is the slate of officers. We'll be adding Mitch as a member to our slate of officers. You have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so Marty, you motioned, and Gary, you seconded.
On the vote, Mr. Callahan.
Yes.
Mr. Grucci,
Yes.
Ali, who recused himself. Mr. Polakowski.
Yes.
Mr. Trotter.
Yes.
Yes, that motion carries.
And then the next resolution is to add Mr. Pally to the governance, audit, and finance committees. Like with the LDC, we are appointing all of the members to each of the committees.
Everyone will make that motion. Is there a second? Mr. Callahan.
I'll second.
On the vote, Mr. Callahan.
Yes.
Mr. Grucci,
Yes.
Ali, recuse himself. Mr. Polakowski.
Yes.
Mr. Trotter.
Yes.
Mr. Braun votes yes. Motion carries. Lori?
Okay, included in your package for the IDA is the operating results July for year to date and for the month of July comparison to budget. A couple of things I want to point out. During the month of July, we did have some activity as far as revenue goes. We had some pilot penalties that we assessed and were paid during that period. We also had 4 applications during that period. We didn't have any closings, but you will see next month, we did have 3 closings in August. So pretty much the rest of our expenses are in line with the budget. The one thing I did want to mention was that today I felt like I was playing Star Wars or one of these games back and forth with our banks. So we have an account at Hanover. This morning, we got notification, they're gonna increase it to 1.2%. Our rate is up from 0.85%, so it's gonna go to a full 1.2%. So I asked Flushing how the rate is, and they responded they're gonna increase us to 1.558%. So both of our rates at both of our banks are going up as of October. So I just want to point that out. That came up this morning. And that's the operating report. Want to go through a couple of things. Insurance. At the last meeting, I had mentioned to you that the IDA policies, which are the expiration date start August 12th, and they go for a year. We were under discussion with who our carrier for commercial cyber policy was going to be. Not commercial, just our cyber insurance. And we had found, our broker found somebody that was gonna bring us in at about $3,000 because we were being quoted $7,600 from Chubb. The prior year, we paid Chubb, our commercial crime, $4,200. They increased it to $7,600 in 1 year. So this is on September 1st. We finally went back and forth. We did speak with another broker to try to see if we could find another policy. Pretty much Chubb is the only game, and the comment to us was, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And then we also September 8th happened at the county, and we had already procured this. So this is when we compare everything, even though it's double, almost double what we had paid in the past, it made the most sense to stick with Chubb for cyber. So I just want to point that out, a little bit different than what we had discussed at the last meeting. The other thing I just want to mention is just that all the payroll taxes have been paid in accordance with federal and state guidelines. All regulatory reports have been filed in a timely fashion. All state regulatory payments have been made in accordance with state guidelines in a timely fashion. Last two things I want to mention is the budget. I've included a draft of our budget in this September meeting. This would be our 2023 budget. It's due to be filed with New York State ADO by October 31st. So the next meeting, we'll have to approve it. But for now, I put together a draft for your consideration. I just want to point out a couple of items on the draft budget. One of the items would be, our biggest item is the closing fees and what our expectations are. Based on what we know today, we have about $500,000 we do expect to close. So we've projected $1 million, saying that there is approximately $500,000 of unknown projects. So that's included in our budget. We also, our pilot fees have gone up significantly over the past 2 years because we had a lot of closings last year. They're going to start to hit our budget next year. So that's good. Interest income will be increasing slightly. We might have to adjust it even higher than what we projected in this draft budget. Overall, our expenses, other than the salaries, is pretty much consistent to like a 3 to 5% increase. Of course, we're doing the office renovation, as you're aware, so there's going to be more expenses for just regular ongoing office items that are not capitalizable. And then we'll also have the offset of items that we can capitalize. We'll have an increase in depreciation. So those two lines are larger. Based on this, overall, we're projecting a net deficit budget at this point. But again, this is just draft. This is for discussion purposes, and we'll continue to go through it. Any questions on that draft budget?
Is there an amount over or under which we either expense or capitalize?
Yes, about $500. We look at 500.
Anything under that would be expense?
As long as it's not the same item just being paid in payments, but typically we'll capitalize that. But we're,
We might want to consider raising that. because
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to wind up depreciation schedule on a lot of small items.
right. And we haven't in the past had, everything's been fully depreciated. All we ever had
It's a cost.
is the car and the iPads.
Yeah.
So now we're gonna have actual renovations, but some of the renovations we're doing wouldn't meet the government criteria, like the carpeting, and certain items, so we will have a larger expense at that point. Lastly, the shared service agreement, I just want to point out, this was new last year. We had a shared service agreement. to split certain costs that the IDA pays, that also the LDC benefits. And initially, we took certain estimates or judgments, and we're looking more closely at them. So for the 23 budget, we have adjusted some of those. We've changed our marketing from 50% between the IDA and the LDC to 75 IDA, 25 LDC. Also, our office supplies was 75 IDA, 25 LDC. We've adjusted that to 85 and a 15% to LDC. That's the shared service agreement. Any questions?
Once again, we'll bring back a final budget for your vote at the October meeting. But again, any questions between now and then, send them to Lori or Lisa. I need a motion to accept Lori's report. Thank you, Gary. Second,
Second.
Trotter, on the vote, Mr. Callahan,
Yes.
Mr. Grucci,
Yes.
Mr. Pally,
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski,
Yes.
Mr. Trotter.
Yes.
Mr. Braun votes yes. Lori's report is accepted.
Okay, we have two applications on the agenda. The first is for a project called RAIA 80 LLC. Do you have anybody to join? I can't see.
Yeah, I'm actually going to bring in Dan Baker.
Okay, thank you. I'll keep going through this while you bring them in.
Okay.
This is a project at 80 Division Street in Patchogue. It's near the railroad and the ferry. It's a vacant former blighted hotel in Patchogue Village. I'm sorry, it's a vacant parcel they knocked down, but what had been there, which was a blighted hotel. The plan is to build a roughly 30,000 square foot, 3-story building with 8 one-bedroom units and 13 two-bedroom units and 7 studio loft apartments. Like I said, the hotel has been demolished. The project will include geothermal and solar technology. There's going to be 1 full-time equivalent position. It's an approximately $8.5 million project. They are requesting mortgage reporting tax exemption, sales and use tax exemptions, and a 15-year pilot as a market rate project. We are going to have to have Des Moines do a study or have a study done. And we have representatives from the project that are joining us. Howard, did I miss anything that you wanted to add?
The only thing was, I think Dan and I had discussed it. I understand his client's aware that we have a requirement for the workforce and the affordable units to be included. So based, I think, on the numbers, would be 1 unit of each.
And Mitch, just for your, just to follow up, all of our market rate housing projects must have 10% affordable units and 10% of the units must be workforce. So
And we provide income limits for both of those
yes,
categories.
yes, workforce is up to 80% of the AMI, and I'm sorry, affordable is up to 80% of the AMI, and workforce is up to 120% of the AMI. And we require that the project has a third party, annually has a third party certify that those requirements are actually being met.
Okay.
So, Dan, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
Well, first off, good afternoon all, and congrats to Mitch Pally joining the board. Great addition. I think the only thing I would add, because you did a great job, Lisa, is that yes, I can confirm that Howard and I did discuss the affordable workforce units, and our apologies for not including that in our application, but yes, that is agreeable to the applicant. The only thing I would add, which is becoming a stronger and stronger part of any application I'm making with any applicant to any IDA, which is unfortunately the things that make the benefits important are only becoming more and more important as time goes by, which is the ever increasing cost to construct, the ever increasing interest rates, the increased difficulty in obtaining financing, and all of the other things that go along with making these benefits so crucial to this application and so many that are coming before you and others.
And I got your financials this morning. I appreciate you sending those in. The question I have, and I don't know anything about it, You can do geothermal that close to the water?
I'll let my client answer that. Michael Mitzmacher is on. He's one of the principals. You might be muted, Michael. You're unmuted, but we're having difficulty hearing you. Or I am anyway.
I think the rest of us are too.
Yeah.
I assume he gave us.
How's that?
Now we can hear. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so the geothermal was engineered already and it can be done that close to the water, absolutely.
Okay. As I said, I'm not familiar with it. It's just a general question.
Yeah.
Any other questions for the applicant or Mr. Baker, the attorney?
Is there any comments from the village of Patchogue? I know that they went through the zoning process, so that's good, but did we receive anything? I
No,
didn't
we
see
wouldn't.
anything.
The village approved everything and we haven't had our public hearing yet, so
Okay,
I wouldn't expect that we would have
you
gotten
answered my
anything.
questions.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Board have a motion to accept the application?
Moved.
Thank you, Mr. Grucci. Mr. Trotter seconds it. On the vote, Mr. Callahan,
Yes.
Mr. Grucci,
Yes.
Ali,
Yes.
Polakowski,
Yes.
Mr. Trotter.
Yes.
The board votes yes. The application is accepted. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is an application, and we need to do a resolution also for the Sunrise Wind project. This is an update to an application that we received previously. It's just so that you're aware, this is and for everybody's, to remind everybody, this is the wind farm project that is proposed, and basically the portion in the town of Brookhaven is the transmission line and the hookup to the substation. So they have updated their application. Previously, they sent us an updated application about a year ago that the cost of the project had gone up. And now what they provided to us, and it was included in your packet, is an updated and finalized route. Bill, is there anything else?
No, at this point, they actually not only gave us a narrative of the map of the route that the cable will come across shore, as well as a map, narrative, and meets and bounds description. So we have this thing nailed down as we possibly can. The resolution before the board is to accept the revised application and authorize holding a public hearing.
And I think we have.
So it's Andrew.
Okay, so guys from the project, does anybody have anything that they wanted to add?
This is Andrew Kumarami on behalf of Sunrise. I just wanted to thank the board for their ongoing commitment to this project. And obviously, this is a large and regionally significant project. And therefore, it has a somewhat longer lead time. I also would like to ask Lisa's and staff's ongoing help with this, as well as Bill Weir and his teams. And as Bill mentioned, this really is just a supplement to the application that the board has previously seen. It was already supplemented once in the original application was put in April of 21. It was supplemented with dollar amount updates in July of 2021. And as Bill explained, this most recent update basically just firms up the actual route so that you would be able to move forward with a public hearing.
Everybody has in their package.
Yeah.
What's the expected timing for the public hearing and perhaps the closing?
We had to schedule the public hearing. I'm not ready to today. So we have a little bit more work to do, but when the closing, Andrew, do you have a sense of that?
We gotta-
Well,
The question, Andrew, the real question is, when will you have all the public approvals in place from? I think it's really-
that's right. And we expect those to hopefully have in hand at least the ones that I think you will find important before the end of the year. So we're hoping to come back to you for a final approval before year end. Again, this is not a firm commitment, but we hope to get there.
Thank you. Questions from the board? All right,
I'll make the motion.
to accept the revised or updated application.
And to also set to,
Public hearing.
to,
Authorize.
authorize,
Publishing the public notice and holding the public hearing.
Motion on the floor, is there a second?
Second, Marty Callahan.
Thank you. On the vote, Mr. Callahan.
Yes.
Mr. Grucci.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski.
Yes.
Mr. Trotta.
Yes.
Ron votes yes, that motion is carried. Thank you.
okay, thank you, everybody. The next item on the agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is a resolution for the BLSF LLC project. This, to remind everybody, is a solar installation on approximately 30 acres of the town's landfill. This is on a capped portion of the landfill. And because it's a capped portion of the landfill, there's some special construction protocols that need to be put into place because they can't penetrate into the landfill. And this impacts the cost of this project. Included in your packets is the cost benefit analysis, the pilot, and also we had a public hearing a couple of days ago and there were comments. Those comments and the link to the actual live stream of the public hearing was shared with all of the board. I think we have a representative from the project on if you guys have any questions for him. Does anyone have any questions?
In addition to the live, I think most of you received copies of the letters that were submitted at that public hearing as well.
Yes.
I have a question for the applicant. Could you just refresh my memory as to what this project entails? What's it about?
Daniel, I think you're muted. You want to take that?
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me on. Would you mind, Mr. Grucci, to repeat the question? I couldn't hear it. I'm sorry.
Certainly. I just asked for a refresher as to what this project is about. What are you doing?
Of course. Thank you for the question, Mr. Grucci. It's a 6 megawatt AC solar project. We received an award under the feed-in tariff 5 PSEG Long Island program, a community solar program. We have the land lease with the town of Brookhaven. We are in the middle of the development with the Department of Environmental Conservation to get their approval. We expect start of construction early next year, as soon as the snow melts in Long Island. We think we are ready to get the shovel in the ground. As Lisa mentioned, we will not penetrate the ground. The project will consist of about 16,000 solar panels with 540 watt each for each panel. So that brings us to a DC capacity of about 8.6 megawatts, and it will produce about 25 million kilowatt hours of green energy a year.
If you're not penetrating the ground, how do you hold the solar panels in place?
With ballast blocks. So we have concrete blocks, and in the concrete blocks, we have poles that hold the rails and the panels.
Gotcha. Okay. And I assume you have all the proper liability coverage for the town?
We do. Yes, sir.
Thank you. No further questions.
The questions for the board?
Is the intent, and I apologize for coming in late, having read all the materials. Is the intent that because the landfill at the moment is owned by the town of Brookhaven, therefore it is tax exempt. Is the intent that the parcel on which this project is going to be located is going to be taxed
No, it's leased, the town will still own it,
So therefore, there are no real property taxes.
and there
Well,
never have been.
Well, there would be, but we have a pilot. That's all.
No, but that's my question.
Now it's not, but once you put a commercial project on town property, it would be subject to taxation, but for.
Right, so the parcel in which the project is being located will be assessed by the assessor at something, right? That's what will happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it will be
I
taxed.
was gonna ask.
The pilot tax makes it tax exempt.
No, I
We've done
understand.
that with all our solar
Right.
projects. We have solar projects at the Holtzville Ecology site, the Manorville, the old Manorville compost site, town hall roof, the Bald Hill Amphitheater. None of those projects, Calabro Airport, and so they're in many different districts of the town. And none of them, all of them have zero pilots. And this particular project, taxing it would be cost prohibitive. It would make this project not
Right.
viable, and Daniel could speak to that.
I'm not arguing I'm just trying to figure out why they pay zero now, right? Because the
Correct.
town owns it.
And the town will
The assump-
continue.
the-
to own
And
it.
the town will continue to own it. The assumption is without the pilot, there would be some tax.
Correct.
Okay, and the pilot brings it back to where it is today, which is zero.
Correct.
That's the
That's
circle we are going around.
That's correct.
Thank you.
And we've done that with every solar
Okay,
project
fine.
on town property.
That's
So
And,
being consistent.
right.
Yeah.
and in reading a lot of the comments that were sent to us, the question with regard to the South Country School District and a benefit to that school district that the project is in. Is there any way that the district could be compensated anyway with taxes? That you're saying no, they've never been.
And Daniel can speak to the cost of this project. I think that might be helpful for the board. And the cost of interconnection, which is enormous. Daniel?
Yeah, thank you, Annette. I'm happy to. So the project has been coming along quite some time. We started working on this project probably four and a half years ago. Sending the first application to PCG Long Island, trying to receive some kind of a benefit or an award from PCG Long Island. They were not exactly easy to work with, to be quite frank. We had several meetings, and then we got what's called a CESA report, basically a grid feasibility study back with more than $4 million estimated interconnection costs for 3,700 feet interconnection route. Actually, thanks to Mr. Supervisor Romain and Annette Adoresto, we were able to get into a dialogue with PCG Long Island, and we were able to find a different solution and shaved off about $1 million in estimated interconnection costs. But with $3 million, it's still much higher than everything I have seen in my 14-year solar career so far. The other cost adding point to this project is, as mentioned, we can't penetrate the ground. We have to work with concrete, and then due to the pandemic, the last 2-3 years, unfortunately, solar module pricing, steel, the commodities itself, aluminum, the medium voltage equipment, transformer stations, switchgear equipment, everything has almost doubled. We are seeing some light at the end of the tunnel right now with the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, that has just passed, and that helps the project to actually come along. But as mentioned before in this meeting and earlier meetings, without the pilot, the project would not move forward here at this point.
The end result of all of this is that the school district gets zero now. The likelihood that.
Taxing jurisdictions.
Taxing jurisdiction, right, not just the school district, right, that's to be fair. All the taxing jurisdiction, including the town, gets
Correct.
zero now, right?
Correct.
In the town. The likelihood that anybody would be able to do anything else on a landfill is slim to none. Okay. And therefore, we are putting productive use into a piece of property that would otherwise not be able to be used for any other purpose. So the school district and the local governments end up the same, but we make a public policy benefit to provide green energy to the community. That's the end result of all.
And the fact that the fees collected for the project to the town of Brookhaven are gonna benefit the entire township. That-
Correct,
Is that,
because
that's
the
the, to-
landfill is gonna close to C and D in the end of 2024. And the town is trying to put a lot of these leases and other projects into play so that there's not an enormous tax increase on the town tax line.
Mitch, I think you summed it up very well. Thank you. Board have a motion?
So moved. Gary.
Is there a second?
Second, I'll second it.
Thank you. Vote, Mr. Callahan?
Yes.
Mr. Grucci?
yes,
Valley?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mr. Trotter?
yes.
Mr. Braun votes yes, that motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. The next item, thank you, Daniel. The next item on the agenda is a resolution for MDS Building Ventures. They have requested a sales tax increase. To remind everybody, this is a warehouse distribution center in the Shirley Industrial Park, MS Packaging. We have another project with them in Yaphank, and they're building a second facility. They have requested an increase in their sales tax exemption. The project costs increased by about $5 million from 13.791 to 18.791 million. So the sales tax increase, and it was due to the increases in costs for construction, furniture, racking, computers, special lighting, cabling. There was a whole laundry list of items. And the sales tax abatement that they've requested has increased from 425,000 to 724,500.
And you have the document that you documented the why the increase. I know you just.
The letter was included
Yeah, I
in the
know, but
packets.
Is that verified it and it's, you know, you feel comfortable with what they provided? That's really what I'm saying.
They ask us,
I mean, anybody can write, and I don't mean it in a negative way, but I mean, you feel comfortable with what you know, what they've put in their letter. That's what it is.
my comfort is probably only partially important in this. They've told us that they need additional sales tax to get their building up and running. And so that's our role in this, is that if they need sales tax exemption, they come back to us. There's costs associated with it. So
If they didn't spend it,
they don't
right,
get
they
it.
don't
Just
get it.
doesn't-
You're
doesn't
right.
happen.
it checks itself.
Yeah, it does.
And they have to certify to New York State.
Yeah.
taxation.
Yeah.
You're right.
There's a whole.
Which you don't want a lot of them.
No, you don't want to.
No, there's
Don't
a
want to
whole-
get their bad
There's a whole tracking system that we have in place, so as they spend the
It
sales
seems
tax.
reasonable, but that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
But they don't come to us and ask for
I'm not-
it if they don't need it, and like I said, if they don't spend it, they don't get it, so,
Okay, so there's no,
yeah, so.
And the letter's written by an attorney that
Yeah.
we worked with,
yeah.
Yes.
over the years.
So I need a motion to pass this resolution to increase their sales tax. They don't need additional time, just additional allocation. Exemption.
I make that motion.
Thank you.
On the second?
Lisa?
Oh, Howard, did you have something you wanted to add?
Well, yeah, are we going to schedule a public hearing for this?
We do, we need to.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's
We
why we have the attorneys.
So amend,
Modify.
there's a
So-
motion and a second, you can amend.
Amended.
Yeah, I
You read it?
amended with regard to public.
Public hearing.
Who was the second? Thank you.
I'll amend the second. It was Felix.
Not a problem.
All right, Mr. Callahan?
Yes.
Mr. Grucci?
Yes,
Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Polakowski?
Yes.
Mr. Trotter?
Yes.
Mr. Braun votes yes, motion carries.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask that we take the next item out of order because I believe that representatives from Camoin have joined us. So I'm going to bring them up. They're going to do a presentation on the spec industrial study that we commissioned. It's included in your packets, and I see some people printed it.
Yes, we did.
So, and I see that Rachel is with us. I think. I
I'm
see
moving John over.
John's coming in also. Okay, great, thank you. And Amy, when you get a chance, if you get them in, will you share your screen with their
Yes.
PowerPoint? Oh, and John's cute dog.
I'm gonna bring the PowerPoint.
We're gonna share the screen with the PowerPoint. Does that work for you guys? Rachel, I think you're still muted.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to see you all.
How are you?
Having a good meeting so far.
Welcome.
All right, so once you're able to, you can kind of make that full screen if you want, or we can just kind of operate this way. It doesn't matter, but Lisa asked that John and I come today and just present on the findings of the market analysis that we did on the warehouse and distribution sector, real estate sector in Brookhaven, to help provide you all with some more information as you are making your decisions. And so you can go to the next slide. So in terms of overall presentation here today, we will review the purpose of the analysis, the major findings, and the discussion. Is the PowerPoint working okay on your end?
Yes.
Am I moving?
Rachel, just let us know.
Rachel,
if you
talk
want
to
us
me.
To move ahead.
Oh yeah, you can go to the next slide.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just see it as, it just says warehouse and distribution to me. It's the cover page still.
Oh, no, we're on page 3.
Okay,
We're on-
perfect. Then I won't look at, I'll just look at my list, my screen. That's fine.
That's all I see as well as the warehouse and distribution analysis.
Oh, yes.
Felix, you can't see it either?
I can only see the warehouse and distribution analysis.
So just the cover page.
Did you hit share screen?
Says you are sharing.
We can see it, like it popped up, and maybe because you hit,
Full screen?
yeah, maybe that, maybe because you hit presentation, maybe it got funny. I wonder if we can change it on our side. No.
That's the study.
You clicked on slides or on outline?
Come back over.
That's
We
the
don't have the
actual
PowerPoint.
study.
All right, so we don't have the PowerPoint date.
Okay, you can go back up there on this down.
I don't know how I'm gonna fix. Okay, start share. Let's try this again. Okay, oh, there I am. Okay. Okay, it's this right here.
Yes.
Do you guys see anything different?
Yes,
Is that working now?
I think so.
I see major IDA.
It looks like it's where you had progressed to, so that looks good.
Okay, I didn't do anything except for close it and open it again.
It's all right. It's all right. Team effort.
It's good. Something wrong with the computer. Reboot it. And once you reboot it.
So let's back up just a bit. Let's go back to the second slide if we could, the one that's agenda. Now that we're kind of situated. Yep, there you go. Perfect. So Lisa and her team asked Camoin Associates to assist with this analysis. For those of you who don't know, I'm Rachel Selsky. I'm a vice president at Camoin Associates. I work with Lisa on the reasonableness testing that we do. So I'm very familiar with the types of projects that come through the Brookhaven IDA. And I'm also here with John Walker. He's an analyst at Camoin Associates. He does the vast majority of our retail market analysis, data collection, and analysis. And so we came together as a team. Dan Stevens also worked with us on this project. He's the director of our real estate team at the firm, to create a methodology to really understand how to think about this question that you all have. And so the purpose of the analysis really was to in recognition that there's been a lot of spec building and spec projects being proposed. And so we are asked to assist in understanding the supply and demand trends, consider how the current growth and pipeline may impact vacancy rates, and provide information to the IDA board to really guide decision-making moving forward. We understand you have these projects that come before you. If you go to the next slide, we recognize that you have these 5 projects in front of you, and you're trying to understand how this much in new buildings. So over 2 million square feet, 556 million in investment. How would that impact the community, and how should you think about these projects going forward? And so what we did, and if you want to go to the next slide, I know you all have seen the report. It was very data heavy. So I wanted
Rachel, if I don't mean to interrupt you, but it's not just these 5 projects that concerns me. It's these 5 projects and what else may be coming in that we haven't seen yet.
Yeah.
Where is the cutoff point that we now start to be concerned that we have too many of the square footage of warehousing and distribution?
Absolutely. I think that's a great point, and something, it's really a timing issue. So like these projects, there is still demand, there's still demand, but at some point it's going to flip. And so how do we think about the projects moving forward? And so you're absolutely right. These are just 5 projects. There are many other projects in the county that are in different points of the pipeline and the construction. And so it's more than just these 5 projects, and it also impacts your existing facilities. And so it's a great question that you all are asking. I think it's really forward thinking and important right now. And so our analysis really looked at as much of that information as we could. You can go ahead to the next slide, including understanding what's going on with the industry and what are the projected trends for this warehouse and distribution center industry as a whole. And so over the last 10 years or so, you saw it was like pretty stable. You saw some growth right at the end of like 2019 or so, a drop in 2020. Likely due to COVID, but then a steep increase in total number of jobs in this sector in Brookhaven over the last 10 years. And you can see it went up. It's starting to stabilize a bit more coming into 2022. And so you've seen this, you've seen the increased demand. It's national news being discussed about the increased demand for these types of jobs, and therefore the facilities that are related to those jobs. If you go on to the next slide, we also look at vacancy rate. And so you can see we looked at both distribution and warehousing separately because we like to look at the nitty gritty. Combined, however, the current vacancy rate for warehouse and distribution facilities in Suffolk County. So you're not in a vacuum, you exist in a larger region. So the combined vacancy rate for these types of buildings and facilities is 2.4%. You'll notice that distribution is like essentially at 0% vacancy. It's a much smaller total square feet compared to warehouse. And so the warehouse, they kind of even each other out. So the combined vacancy rate is 2.4% from the most recent data that we have available.
Rachel, if I could ask you another question.
Sure.
I see the decline in the vacancy rate, and it appears to coincide with the vacancy rate decline seems to coincide with the decline of COVID, meaning that the country came out of its lockdown and people started going back out and shopping again, and perhaps the need for online sales was not there, which would, in my opinion, decrease the need for warehouse and distribution centers. Did you find that in your study?
So I may be misunderstanding. So I see the decline, it was starting to go up a little bit right around 2020. And then as there was so much more consumer demand for goods rather than experiences, people were buying stuff and food and all types of things that they weren't historically buying online. That's when the decline started to happen. That's when these facilities started to really fill up because there was so much demand for that last mile type of distribution center, and there was increased demand for warehousing space. So we've found actually that as coming out of COVID, it's continued to there's continued to be the demand, the supply and demand continues to grow. So people are still building industrial facilities and there continues to be the demand for space. The future is yet to be unknown, as you kind of mentioned, Felix, as people start to transition back to more experiences. Will that demand continue to exist? Will people still be buying, everything from Amazon and everything from online retailers, rather than going out and spending money traveling and spending money going to concerts and food, outdoor, restaurants and more experiences? So how will that shift in consumer demand impact the demand for the warehousing and distribution space? That's a major consideration. I don't know if I answered your question, Felix. Did I get to it?
Yeah, you touched upon the concern that I have, and as we go through this, it may clear it up a little bit more.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, and everybody feel free to ask questions. I'll do my best. I might lean on John as needed as well with some of the data questions.
I just want to say also, in addition to the kind of warehouses we're seeing the Home Depots and the Lowe's that are, buying space within those warehouses for retail stores, so it's not just, what we were just discussing with Felix, but also a mix of that also.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. So if you go on to the next slide, you'll see the development pipeline. Here we're looking at the amount of space that is either proposed and in final planning or under construction. You'll notice that Suffolk County has the, vast majority, seems like an understatement, but the vast majority of the activity in this space is occurring in Suffolk County. Nassau County, from what we heard on interviews and some of our research, Nassau County is, getting fully built out. The property is just that much more expensive and is being converted to different types of uses. So like multifamily, it's more of a, units or spaces being used for residential uses, things like that. Whereas Suffolk County can still serve those major markets, but there remains land, and so it's more attractive to this type of development, which is why there is some of the reasons why there's such a large amount of this type of proposed and in final planning for this type of space.
Rachel, I assume when you say Suffolk County, you're excluding Brookhaven Town from those numbers?
No, that's in there.
Okay.
Yep.
So we're part of that 8,116,000
that's correct.
Square feet, I guess, or proposed final planning. Okay.
That's correct. And so this is a combination of data that we pulled from CoStar. And John, you might need to just correct me here. So this is from information from CoStar, which is I'm sure you've heard of it. It's a real estate service that we subscribe to that captures the inventory and what's going on in real estate, as well as information provided to us from the IDA as well. John, were there any other sources that fell into this category, into this data?
No, that's what we drew off of from this.
Great.
That's right. And I'll just say that between the two, we started with our CoStar pipeline, and Lisa and her team were able to augment that with a few extra pieces. And I know that there was a couple of pieces in the CoStar that the IDA was not aware of. So, I guess everybody's trying to get a hold of what the entire reality is, and between, the sources. So,
Mm-hmm.
I think we've got good coverage on that.
Yeah.
Rachel, in future slides, do you break out Brookhaven's portion of Suffolk County to see what of that proposed 8.1 million actually is going to reside in Brookhaven?
So we don't have that in the slides. John, is that in the report?
That is not, though I will say that that listing that we saw up a couple of slides that highlighted those 2 million square feet. 2 million and more is included in the 8 million that we see for Suffolk County. We could construct that, though. I don't know the number offhand, what that proportion is. But there's a quarter right there just in 5 projects. So,
right.
Yeah, a substantial portion.
And that's just what's in the pipeline, not yet what is expected to come in.
What we have right now are actual projects that have been proposed, right? In the analysis, we do not build on an expected increment. We're working exclusively with, what we know to be in place right now.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
5 projects that were on an earlier slide and also in the study are 5 projects that this board has accepted applications for.
Right.
So if my math is right, about 25% of that 8 million sits in Brookhaven currently.
Just in those 5 projects.
Right. Not counting what's already here.
There's, in the study, which I don't have in front of me right now, but there is a more detailed listing of 30, 40 some projects that we account for and the towns that they fall into, the communities they fall into. And we can identify which of those are Brookhaven.
Great, thank you.
Good. So now if you go on to the next slide, we had to, so as John was saying, we did our best to kind of get our arms around all the projects that are in the pipeline, kind of what is coming down the pike, what is in construction. And we needed to figure out, so if all of this comes online, what will happen to the current vacancy rate? How do the projected absorption rates, so projected how much of the space will actually be occupied, align with the projected pipeline? And where is that disconnect? And so we looked at a number of different scenarios to really get our hands around this. And so there's a bit of a range. I want to go through kind of what those scenarios are. So the first scenario, the first 2 scenarios are around demand. So there's the CoStar absorption. They put out some projections that list out what they expect the absorption to be over the next 5 years based on their information, their market research, and they are, they're higher rates of absorption. That's kind of the case where the jobs continue to grow and there is continued, incredible demand for this kind of space. We also wanted to kind of check that with what was happening in the county pre-COVID. Like if we go back to before the world was turned upside down, what levels of absorption could we expect? And so we looked back at, I believe it was 6 years pre-COVID, and what amount of space, how many square feet of this type of space was absorbed each year. And so we use that as like more of a historic average absorption rate. That's the demand side. What's gonna happen on the demand side is one of our questions. The other question is on the supply side. What is actually going to be built? And so there's 3 different scenarios we look at here. One, we look at the CoStar scenario. Again, they have projections about what they believe the amount of growth will be over the next 5 years. We also, but that was John, correct me if I'm wrong, that was a bit below what we knew the pipeline to be. Is that right?
Yeah, I don't think that their projections really capture, the potential build out that's kind of built into the large pipeline that's in place. And part of that might be they weren't aware of all of the projects. I was saying that we augmented the list. I'm not sure But reviewing what they had, it looked like it, was unreasonably modest
Right.
in their expected build out.
And so we added 2 more scenarios based on the information we have at hand about all these projects. So the projects that are in front of the IDA, those 5 projects in front of the IDA board, the projects that we heard about through, our research and that came to us through the IDA, as well as the information that was from CoStar. So that's that 8 million number that you saw on the previous slide about the development pipeline. And so we said, well, what if only 50% of that is built? Not all of it's going to be built, right? Some of it's going to fall off. Things are going to change. It's not all going to be built. So we looked at a 50% scenario as well as an 80% scenario that it gets built out over the next 5 years, like in even increments. So we looked at these, 5 questions, and we wondered what would the vacancy rate be under these different scenarios. And you can see it ranges from, the high levels of absorption and the modest pace of growth of 3.4%. But if we're under a scenario where the historic absorption of Suffolk County comes back and 80% of the current pipeline is built, that's closer, a 9% vacancy rate. And so this was the modeling that we did to really look at what the impact would be on the county's vacancy rate under these different scenarios. All right. If you go to the next slide, there are certainly other things at play. So the project pipeline is always changing. We talked about that already. Like even just trying to get a handle on all the projects at play was a challenging endeavor. And so there's always things coming in and out of the market. And it's difficult to say for certain what types of future development will happen. So that's the supply side, but the demand side also is uncertain. There are a lot of things at play. So there's changing consumer demand due to inflation, the recession that's potentially on the horizon, as well as just changing consumer desires. People are wanting to travel more and spend less money on goods. Some current industrial buildings may come offline just due to they're aging or they get transitioned into a different type of use. So that will bring supply down. There are increasing interest rates that may make projects no longer financially feasible. So that would reduce the number of projects that would move forward from planning to construction. Continued increased demand from New York City and the New York City area could warrant additional space need in Suffolk County. And there's also innovations in distribution technologies that would allow for higher ceilings, and therefore things can be higher and need less square feet, like less footprint. And so it would be switched to like a square footage to more of a cubic space. And so you would need less footprint to accommodate a greater amount of goods. And so all of those things are at play when we're considering, what is the future of this sector.
Rachel, would it be fair to assume that some of these items that you list here as potential risks would put further pressure on the build out of these types of distribution and storage centers into Suffolk County? And if it's into Suffolk County, I'm sure it'll be a preponderance of it in Brookhaven town, since we have the bulk of the real estate left to be developed, as compared to the other various townships. So inflation risks and aging, adapting of current properties, changes in interest rates would put more pressure on the IDA to approve these projects than if those types of things didn't exist. Is it fair to assume that?
Well, so those things will make it will make, like, changing interest rates will make the financial feasibility of these projects less ideal. And so that would put additional pressure on the IDA to play a role in supporting the projects. The aging and adapting of current properties, that would result in increased or decreased supply of space, and therefore if demand continues up and there is still demand for more modern facilities, there would be increased demand for this type of space in the county, and therefore demand on the IDA to work with these kinds of projects.
Right.
Go ahead, John.
I was going to say, the whole goal of the exercise that we did with the modeling on the earlier page, kind of, there's a great deal of uncertainty in general on the supply side, on the demand side. And what we've done with this, I think, is build some bounds around each of the elements as best we're able to provide some guidance, and I will say the upshot is that we see a real potential for overbuilding within the market. That's kind of where it all points. On this page of other considerations, I think we're just trying to make the point that even when we look at all the factors that we can kind of shape and model, there's still some uncertainty. And so with, one of the big ones that will be affecting on the demand side is this potential for a upcoming recession, okay, which could definitely drop back the demand. Also, to the extent that interest rates go up, some of these projects that currently pencil out, they might make sense at, prior interest rates. You raise a few percent, they might, go into deferral or be prolonged some. So I guess that's what we're trying to get at with this, is there's additional uncertainty on top of what we've already discussed.
Thank you. And it did raise the questions. And if it sounds like I'm opposed to these types of development projects, I'm not. I'm just trying to get an understanding of what risks there would be to Brookhaven to overbuild these types of projects.
No, and I think that's smart. And, I think if you go to the next slide, that's kind of our conclusion, is that caution is warranted in this situation. Recent demand and growth of this sector and growth in demand may not sustain into the future, which would result in higher vacancy rates that would likely be most detrimental to the older, less modern, lower height facilities in the community and in the town, as well as in the county. Over the last several years, demand has been exceptional, and the market has absolutely responded. And that's why you see all of these new projects coming online. Vacancy rates remain extremely low, but there is this like bubble of projects that are all looked at the market and said, "Ooh, now's the time," and got their act together and put it in front of the IDA board. And so it's this like bubble of projects that are going to come online. The vertical innovations may be really causing an underestimate of impact. So as I had kind of mentioned, people can store more stuff higher, and therefore they need less space. But our current understanding of square foot and how increased demand relates to square footage of industrial space doesn't quite capture that. And so it might be have a more significant impact on the vacancy rate as people are able to use these new innovations. The height demands that people are looking for, all new buildings, all the tenants are coming in asking for these really high ceilings. That will negatively impact the older buildings that weren't built that way. As we just talked about, the unstable economic conditions will negatively impact the sector. And the probable increase in vacancy will be in the range of 6 to 9%, as we had seen under those market scenarios.
Rachel, what caught my attention in your first report that we were given was your two middle bullet hits, your vertical innovation by causing or underestimate of impact and height demands of negative impact on older buildings. That one really caused me to be concerned that the new technology that's out there and the landlords are basing their lease upon volume versus square footage. The state-of-the-art buildings is going to cause a drain on the existing storage and warehousing and distribution centers that we currently have, causing them to be the same scenario that we experienced, I think it was back in the 80s, when all the new shopping centers came on board and all the old shopping centers went into decay. I would hate to see us move forward and not take that kind of caution, so that we're not cannibalizing what we currently have for the production of new and state-of-the-art types of warehousing. And to that extent, I think the IDA needs to wrestle with that theory. And if indeed they agree that that's a problem, we should have some kind of a plan and a program that rings the bell when it's time to cut off taking applications for these types of projects.
And you're right on, Felix, when we had some interviews and we spoke with real estate brokers, and they voiced similar concerns around that the market is soon to become oversaturated. And just as you said, the greater impact will be on those smaller, less modern facilities than the larger, newer ones.
Next, I don't know if anyone has a handle on the existing square footage of warehouse and distribution facilities in the town, that if everybody's correct and the new volume buildings are more important, what happens to the old ones? And where are they? You know, is there adaptive reuse for those buildings? You know, a couple other risks here. I mean, we have let's call it a reputational risk for ourselves as well as the town, that if all of a sudden a number of these are empty and there are tax issues and everything else, but you know, these builders have a significant financial risk. A lot of these guys have been in the business a long time. They're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars investment. And I'm sure there's a race to get the shovel in the ground to get their buildings up before the next guy. But it's hard to, you know, kind of put on a scale which risks are more. Certainly for the builders, and their financial risks are very high if they're the last guy in town. And you know, a number of the people that have been before us have also said that while they're talking to a number of potential lease customers, if you will, that until they get a shovel in the ground and steel starts to go up, the people don't believe them. So again, it's going to be a race to see who gets started first.
And I think based on some of the applications we've seen, that the heights are very different than the original buildings. So they're building a totally different type of structure compared to today.
Well, that's why
Right.
she indicated that the vacancy rate issue is more likely to be with the older buildings than with the newer buildings, and that people who are in the older buildings may leave those buildings for the newer buildings because of the additional height and other amenities that the newer buildings will now provide. I mean, what that does do, of course, is, as Fred pointed out, gives the community an opportunity to transform those older buildings into new uses that may not have been envisioned back when those buildings were built. So you have, that doesn't mean it's a panacea, but you have that opportunity.
Yeah, you might have some opportunity for some housing, depending on the area that are located, better than if it was in the reverse.
That's correct.
And at one time, Lisa and I also talked about attempting to differentiate between distribution and warehousing. Meat distributions, the Amazons and people like that, whether it's Lowe's and their appliances or Home Depot and their appliances, versus warehousing where it could be like, in our case, it was a spec building like Bactolite, which has got a huge facility being built in the Shirley Industrial Park, and they're headquartered in Hopewell.
Or
That-
MDS.
Yeah.
The project we was on today.
Those to me are warehouses more than distribution. And I don't know if you can really define them, but That's kind of nice. Simple business.
Yeah, they're different, totally different uses.
Yeah,
That's like the shopping center in Port Gestation that was built 50 years ago and it was stores and now Stoll is knocking it down and he's putting apartments.
Well, yeah, they're not cheap, so.
All right, well, all right, again, I'm only telling you what I hear, whether he's coming or not, but the whole idea is to get everybody out of there.
The problem with
And put
that
a park.
theory though is housing fits much better intermixed with commercial, the J zoning. These are industrial buildings in industrial areas. You're not putting housing.
No,
Rich, anybody
that's what I
can
said.
bring-
That's not
But
happening.
something else, they could do something.
I'm sorry.
Or it could become like,
Well, they tried to, and they got approval to, and then they ran into a sewer issue with the county. County capacity was not great enough for the industrial park on the housing. So they're redoing the sewer line as we speak. To
that's
provide,
like the whole park, right?
right, to provide
That's
additional
different.
capacity.
It's not here and there.
Right,
That's
it's a centralized location,
Yeah.
which is a
Yeah.
different context, but each old building is in a place that may or may not be appropriate. You don't know until you know what building you're gonna look at.
The requirements for a warehouse are totally different than
That's
for
correct.
other usages that they can
Correct.
own, so.
Yeah.
yeah,
You
correct.
don't know.
Are there any other questions for the representatives from Des Moines?
You do a good job.
Hearing none, I thank you very much.
Giving us a lot to chew on.
Yep. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you very much.
Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Rachel, for all the answers. I appreciate that.
Oh, I hope I didn't leave you with more questions.
Well, there's always another question, like a Columbo.
Take care, guys. Have a good afternoon.
Good one.
Bye.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I think Mitch made a good point before that in the immediate future, the buildings that are going to be affected are the existing ones that don't meet the standards of high ceilings and greater volume. And those will become, zombie buildings in the not too distant future as we get more and more of these high-tech, higher capacity buildings in place. But that doesn't mean that in the future that they won't be vacant. I mean, if her 9-point-something% vacancy rate comes to fruition, just based upon the pipeline, we've got over 200,000 square feet of empty space, strewn all around Brookhaven town. I would welcome the board considering doing creating a plan so that we can continue to take these types of applications. And I understand the distinction between the warehousing and the distribution, and perhaps it's two plans that tells us when we should start to really be concerned that we're approving too many of these types of projects, and either put a moratorium on them or ring the bell and say no more for a while. Rather than get to the finish line and find out that we have too much and now we've created the scenario of the 80s back again.
Felix, one thing that I just want to point out is that I think that there's a different end user who isn't going to be interested in these modern high ceilings, new buildings. They are still going to be looking for the older, more traditional buildings. So I don't think that this necessarily means that they're all going to be empty. I think there will still be a market for them because some people, that's exactly what they want when the price is right.
Price is right.
I think though, to Felix's point, at what point do we reach a critical mass? And how do we create the metric to get to that amongst some type of, formal one-sheeter that we can be guided by?
You got a crystal ball.
Yeah. And there's so many factors that I don't think we're gonna come up with a one-sheeter that's gonna be a metrics and we go, well, this happened, so now we move here. There's too many pieces.
Certainly, this study is
But
getting
Lisa,
a-
are we going to?
addressing that and becoming aware of the issues. And as we look at these, there are critical things that are brought out in this that
Yeah,
we
I
put
think the
into
study
play
is-
during the conversation. So I
Felix?
think that, it's
I
hard
was
to-
going to say, are we just going to leave it to our own feelings as to when, we've reached that critical mass? I mean, what do we have, 5-6 people on the board? That means 5 or 6 different opinions, rather than doing like we did with the UTAP and say, these are the types of, residential units we want. These are how many we want. and here's where we want them, why wouldn't something like that make sense for these, these mega buildings that are being put up? I mean, we're talking about millions of square feet of space that if indeed it becomes, 10% unusable or vacant, we have another huge problem that's going to be facing the town board.
Felix, there's one other thing that hasn't been mentioned, and that is, as several of the applicants said when they were here, just because they're putting up a $200,000 square foot building, doesn't mean you're looking for one 2,000 square foot, 2,100 square foot.
2 million square foot.
Or 200,000 if it's one building.
Right.
Most of them have said they're willing to break it up
All of them.
into smaller parcels.
And Fred, none of them has said that they have a lease signed with anyone yet.
That's correct.
So they're speculating just like we are.
They've all expressed to us that what they find is that nobody is willing to sign a lease until you have a shovel in the ground and steel up and you're making legitimate progress. So I don't think that we're going to see, and it's not like one of them said that, that's been, all of them across the board have said that, and talking to other people, that's in other areas, they're hearing the same thing. So I'm not.
Perhaps that's
Especially in
because
this day and
that's the
age,
way
yes.
it's always been. Maybe it's because the developers know that they can get what they're looking for, build a building and then go out and spec it. If the word starts to get around that, hey, you guys, if you're serious about taking on the space in the warehouse, you've got to give us some kind of a proposal. You've got to give us some kind of indication other than a verbal communication that you're going to take this space when it's leased. Otherwise, we're not going to get an approval from the town. I mean, that may change some thinking out there in the marketplace.
Is that a hard requirement in this day and age with supplies and the economy that we're in with regard to, meeting a demand and a date of when a building would be built or if it's going to be built? I mean, these guys are not going to sign a lease, without having some indication, because they're putting their future in jeopardy just by signing something and tying themselves up when maybe something in between is going to come along and, or maybe they can wait until, 2 years from now when it's complete.
And in
But
reality, they are putting up a lot more money than we are.
Yes.
bingo.
100%.
Okay, a lot more money than we are. And their willingness to take that chance, for lack of a better term, is an integral part of their business in that regard.
There's also the town of Brookhaven. I mean, things take a little longer, right, sometimes in our town with planning and buildings. But I think, to Felix's point again, where's the garbage going, right? So if, we become a storage center for the region, I mean, do we want to consider adding something to, our process here that, that limits some of the, are accepting some of these projects.
Well, isn't the real question the job creation numbers? And when you don't know who the tenant is, you don't know what jobs you're doing. That's the real issue.
Suffolk County IDA just terminated the company.
Bill, could you speak up a little bit, please?
Sorry, Suffolk County IDA at their meeting in the July meeting terminated one spec warehouse distribution facility because they did not have any jobs at the end of the first job market. Not a single tenant, not a single job, so they terminated it. And we have that in our documents as well. So we are, the IDA is protected. It still goes back to, are the developers going to put up this money to build something? They have said, and I think it's correct, that no tenant will sign a lease until they know the date the building projecting goes. Right. Yes, they can. So
I wasn't suggesting that they sign a lease prior to the completion of it. That's not our obligation. Our obligation is to make sure that, A, to Annette's point, there's something going on in the town that's creating jobs. But do we want to create jobs in the short term and then have a problem in the long term that the facility that they're working at is going under because there's just too much competition and they're cannibalizing each other? And then all those jobs that we created no longer exist? I mean, what I was thinking and trying to suggest, and I'm probably not doing a very good job of it, is that there's got to be some kind of metric that this board can review that says, yes, this is a good project, this is a good area for it, and and we still need this much space. I mean, I think the report that we saw kind of leads us in that direction, but it also tells us to be very cautious about overbuilding. What I'm not understanding is there a red light in this process that says, hey, enough of the warehouses in Brookhaven? Like we said for other things, that there's enough of them, let's put a moratorium on it and let's see where the market takes it. I don't think that we should just be open-ended with every application that comes in and just base it upon historic criteria. I think that we need to be innovative and forward-thinking on this to prevent a future problem for future IDAs and future town boards.
I feel like those are good points. I don't think that there is a red light, or at least I don't see where one is going to happen, except for we have a couple of things that we can do internally. And I think if we do some of those things, like adjusting our pilot, the way that the pilot is offered, that's one thing that we can do so that it makes it, because I think probably the first ones in, or the first few in, are going to be built, and then the ones who show up later to the game are not going to be built. And I think a few years ago, we had more assisted living projects coming in than I could believe. And I kept thinking, when is this going to stop? Like, when are we going to reach a saturation point? And then all of a sudden, we just didn't get any more. I think the market does know, I don't know if the market knows, but the market corrects itself. So I think in some regards, we can be sort of along and just see what happens, and it'll stop when it's supposed to stop. I do understand there's the concern that we'll end up with too many of them, but somebody said before that these developers have a lot more at stake than we do. They have a lot of money invested and are proposing to invest a lot of money. So I think some of the costs that they're accruing right now might be the cost of business. Maybe they'll decide to pull their project out and not do it, but they have to, if they want to be in the game, they have to spend this money now. But I think that one thing that we can do to help normalize this, I guess, is adjust our pilot for these. So that's something that this board can decide to do. And I just want to mention to everybody also that I have gotten requests from 2 projects that they would like us to hold a public hearing. I have told them I can't schedule a public hearing until I know how you guys want to progress. So, but I just want to put that out there so that you have all the information that I am getting phone calls. I am getting people who are interested in moving ahead at this point. So obviously,
how much additional square footage is that over the 2 million that we currently have in the pipeline?
No, these are 2 projects that you've already accepted the application.
Okay, I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
Yeah.
When you say, Lisa, when you say adjust the pilot, are you saying that they should pay more in the pilot or less time in the pilot? I'm not clear on what you're saying, what you mean by adjusting the pilot.
Well, I mean, I think those are certainly 2 options. I don't have an exact formula worked out, but those are 2 options that we could look at to help
see,
incentivize and move,
I think we should
things.
look at it.
I would be a little hesitant to do that because, like I said before, I'm not against these projects. I'm against the overbuilding of these projects. So I wouldn't want to make it more difficult or more costly for those that we consider to be a good project and the community and the town can use that project. I don't want to make it more difficult for them to be able to build. I want to understand, when is enough enough? And it doesn't seem that we can come up with with a solution for that, other than leaving it to the marketplace.
Like I said, you use Gary's term, I don't know if we're gonna be able to come up with an absolute metric as to when is enough enough. I think we need to continue to discuss it over the next month or so. And anybody has any ideas as to how to refine it, circulate an email to the board and to Lisa and to our attorneys. And maybe we can come up with something, but as Lisa said, as it related to assisted living, the market's gonna tell us, when enough is enough. Hopefully, it's not after a building's up and empty.
I'll be very interested to see if the trend continues in 23.
Yeah.
Very interested to see, because I think a lot of people got in now because of market demand. And people who come here will see the other amount of land, amount of volume being built. So I think you're right. Let's see what happens.
But we do have 5 projects that are waiting. So although I understand that this board needs time to adapt, to bring everything in and think about it, we do have projects that are, we've accepted 5 projects, and a few of them are asking that they are ready to move forward. And so I don't, obviously you guys take as much time as you need, but I just want to plant that seed, probably because I get the pressure on the other end.
I know one for certain, the OTB project's not gonna close until sometime in 2023. I can't speak to the other 4.
We have others that, one of them would like to close next month. I told them I don't think
I
that's.
don't see a reason to hold that up.
I think we should.
Well,
Yeah.
We accepted the application.
okay, so
The
then,
least we can do is hold a public hearing.
but there's a chain reaction. So now you want me to set the public hearing, but then I have to do the pilot. So one,
What I was gonna suggest, when you brought it up, is why don't you review the pilot, make some suggestions between Annette, Bill, yourself, and let's have that maybe for the next meeting to discuss, and then move ahead with something after that.
well, one thing that we could do, just if we want to move ahead with these projects and not pushing it out for another month, is we could say that we're going to give a narrow window of land only to get them up and built, and then do a 480 double 45B, which is effectively 10% increments for 10 years. That's one thing that we could do.
You have an attorney on the Zoom who represents at least 2 of our projects. Listen carefully.
Yeah.
Howard?
No.
No, Dan Baker.
Oh, Dan, okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean,
Listen, I think if they are willing to go forward, if they are interested in going forward, we should at least try to move those 2 and see what happens.
Yeah.
The other ones will happen if they happen, but if those 2 or any of the 2 are interested in doing something, we should reciprocate.
okay, so do you guys, and whatever we do for those 2 for the pilot is probably what we're gonna end up doing for the rest of them. That's what you can pivot.
You might want to just tweak the pilot language to do what Bill said, the county did, like just to put it in there flat out. If they don't have movement permits something by year 1 or 2.
And we've done that in,
Yeah. Like right in the language for these particular specs. So that you're gonna do.
Yes.
Until we figure it out.
Okay,
That's fair.
All right.
okay, so
Are you, with regard to reviewing the pilot, are we gonna do that also? In between this? or not?
Yeah, may I ask, I was under the impression that the recent warehousing projects were double 45Bs. With a land only for some period during construction. That's what I thought that's what the board had been doing.
Yeah, but we may be shortening the land only period of it.
Okay.
That people aren't sitting there not building it.
So basically making them put the shovels in the ground and get it going.
Right away.
If I can offer another thought, the applications that we've already accepted, they were playing by the rules that were in existence at the time that they submitted their application. I would suggest that until we know what we're going to do, leave the criteria for the public hearing and the pilot payments the same until we have a firm understanding that we're going to do something or we're not going to do something. I wouldn't want to cause these folks to experience a greater cost than what they originally proposed to build this at when they presented their applications to us. I don't think that's fair to pull the rug out from under them at this point.
I don't think that's what we're doing, Felix. I think we're actually doing what they've asked us to do, which is to move forward.
Right, but we're going to adjust their pilot payment.
But they don't have a pilot yet. We haven't said anything with them.
If I may, if I understand it correctly, what's being suggested is to make certain that they adhere to a schedule to develop. And in the past, we've always said they will move ahead diligently. So instead of just using the more vague language of diligent, I think now we're just going to set up some milestones, if I understand this correctly, to make it does move along. I don't think that should be any different than what's in their interest anyway, because it should not increase their costs. And if I were them, I would want to develop that property as quickly as possible so that they're one of the first ones out there to lease their properties out to who's ever available and not.
The climate that
On
we're
board.
in, and the economy they're in, I think that's a responsible thing to
Yes.
do.
And I think that benefits them and us at the
Absolutely,
same time.
it's a win.
Absolutely.
If
Because
that,
if there's
if
one
that
that's
pulls them
not
back,
viable, and it's not going
that's okay.
forward,
No,
the
that's
next
okay. We
one
don't
will
have
come
something
up that is
developing that's.
viable.
Yeah.
That's right.
So I think do I need a resolution to set the public hearings for the two projects or the few projects that have come forward, or am I good to progress with
I
them?
think the original acceptance already gave you that.
Okay. Okay, good. Then I'm going to start moving forward with the public hearings.
Very good. Great.
Okay.
All right. We're reading what we presented.
Yes.
Back to the agenda.
Okay, thank you, everybody. I appreciate the time on this and the direction.
Can I just ask Annette one question?
Yeah.
Annette, have you heard anything from the town board as to their feelings towards these new projects that are coming into the town? Are they concerned about the overbuilding of warehouse and distribution? Not that they're going to influence the decision of the board, obviously, but I was curious to see if they're on the same wavelength that I was.
Yes, and I think now that our study's finalized, we can share it with them.
Yeah,
Yes.
there was a typo in it that I want them to correct before I
They
put it on our
knew
website.
that the IDA was doing this study, they were happy that you were, and they were interested in the results.
I think they wanted us to share our results
Can I ask a question?
with the local.
In that regard?
Absolutely.
Right.
The 5 projects that have been accepted, not
Yes.
approved, but accepted,
Yes,
are they all located on land that is zoned by the town
Yes.
for that purpose?
yes.
Correct.
So therefore, if the town is interested in restricting, not limiting, but restricting some additional industrial uses, one would assume that the town would also have to look at their zoning to eliminate.
It's not
some
that
of
they
the
want to
industrial
take away industrial, that's not correct at all. They
Want to make
want
sure
to
that-
keep all the industrial that they
Okay.
possibly can. But they don't want to see empty buildings going up.
Like everybody else, correct.
But technically, somebody could build a warehouse building without coming here on land already zoned by the town industrial without any recourse by the town. It has a right development.
Yeah.
That could happen in that regard. So just the fact that we may play referee doesn't mean we play referee all the time in that context. That's the
Yeah, that's a very good point.
point.
Has OTB been rezoned?
Yes,
Okay.
it's not effective, but we had the hearing and passed it.
Okay, all right.
But that hasn't used it.
Yes.
Appears to.
We
Yeah.
assume.
Which is not open.
Yeah.
No.
I'm good. Okay, so the next items, we're good. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Thank you for listening. Appreciate it.
Thank you, bud.
Thank you, Alex.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is Ron Cove. Okay, so that's just an update. I just wanted to let everybody know that we're just talking about, oh, you're gonna recuse yourself, aren't you?
Exactly, as you
Thank you.
started. So it's-
Yes, as I looked over at you, I realized what you were doing. Okay.
Let the record
Just let the
show that
record
I
show that
requested.
Frank is
This
recusing.
will take 2 minutes. Come on back.
Don't go too far, Frank.
Yeah, I'll go to the boys.
Oh, Howard, you should recuse as well.
He's muted.
Bye, Howard.
Walk out of the room for a minute.
Leave it on, just walk out.
I'll text you when we're back. This will take 2 seconds. So this is just for the Mensch properties only. You already passed the resolution, the eminent domain process, and we are starting the vesting process, which is the eminent domain process for the Mensch parcels only. It's really just an update. I just wanted to make sure that you were aware. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, if you want, could somebody just grab Frank?
Oh, I
It's in the
got
boys'
that.
room.
You let
Wait till-
Howard know?
You don't
Give
have
him 2 minutes.
Okay. The next item, on the agenda is job creation numbers. Like I mentioned in the LDC, we had a few projects that did not make their job creation numbers. And as you asked Fred and I to reach out to all of the projects and get letters and updates from them. We did that. Everybody was very responsive, and I don't think that there was anything that was out of the ordinary, anything that was going to surprise you as far as their explanation. Much of it had to do with COVID, and I don't think any of them were projects that we had been having significant problems with. So we think everything was appropriate. I was just doing job creation numbers for
Okay.
for the
Record
IDA.
reflect that I've now returned.
Yes,
Thank you.
Frank is back.
Mitch,
So is Howard.
I think the state guideline kind of has been the annual review of the job creation number. Somewhere in the neighborhood, if you hit 85%, you're fine. I think we gave it a little bit more leeway the last year or so because of COVID.
Sure. And I think appropriately so, but that's why I'm gonna be very interested to see the next report. Because to some degree, the COVID explanation has lessened. So I'll be interested to see where they have gone in that regard.
Let's do it in February. you said?
Yes, and then we presented to you guys, we typically give you 2 years so you can see the year before,
Right.
so you'll be
Yeah,
able to
great.
see how,
Right.
what's changed.
Because you need to see the trend.
Yeah,
Right.
we could put 3 if that's helpful, but
Okay.
that's, that'll be to you guys. It's due in February. We usually get it to after we do Paris, so March, April timeline. Any questions on that? Okay, the next item on the agenda. Okay, so I don't know if everybody heard this, but we had a problem with the transcription last month. And as a result, I listened to the meeting while I was reading the transcription. And I think because I was going through that exercise, something clicked in my head. I realized that part of our discussion at the last meeting about the things that we're doing and just wasn't connecting, and I couldn't figure out where the disconnect was. And then I realized I'm the disconnect. I am not doing a good enough job of letting you guys know of the things that we're doing in the office. So we had this whole conversation. I'm going to say community outreach and small business committee was sort of the discussion. And I realized that we're doing so many of these things, but I don't articulate them to you. So I put together a list, and Amy has been leading the charge on most of these. So I just wanted to let you know, just in the past few weeks, Amy spoke at the Farmingville Hills Chamber. She attended a Long Island Regional Planning Council webinar regarding job creation and some programs that are out there. I volunteered to be part of the Long Island Regional Economic Development Council's Workforce Development Committee, I think is what they call it. Amy participated in a Spheres of Influence luncheon, the Middle Country Library October meeting, Libby dinner. She met a bunch of times with the Suffolk County Department of Labor to put together a webinar to connect our projects with Department of Labor Services. That's been put on pause right now because the county's got other things that they're working on, but we will pursue that again when they're up and running. The Offshore Wind Committee, obviously that plays into the Sunrise Wind Project. The Long Island Advancement of Small Businesses webinar. And those are just a couple of things, like if you have questions for Amy about the specifics of it, but those are just a couple of things that I realized you guys don't know all the stuff that we're doing to support the small businesses because I don't tell you about it, because our meetings are so long. I'm like, get to the business I need them to vote on and don't worry about the other stuff. But I wanted you to know, this is not a, like a weird month where we're doing all of these things. This is our norm.
Are you sure?
I'm positive. I'm positive.
Can you maybe on what quarterly or
do a better
monthly, or
job.
whatever it
Yes,
is, just,
yes.
throw it in our
Yep.
report, which you can go over, but at least, visually we have a better
Yes,
handle on it, which is wonderful.
So
We know I'm always yelling about small business, so I appreciate that.
And Frank, that was it. I was like, Frank is passionate about this, but and then I was like, well, he doesn't know, because if you don't tell him when he's a mind reader, so I apologize. We'll do better. Let you know.
This evolves from our self-assessments.
Mhm.
What is the community we serve? Who we're
Right.
supposed to serve? Small business goes back to PPP loans. Should we have been doing those? He says no. After a long discussion, I actually thought there were others around that did it without having to start from scratch.
Right.
So we're constantly looking at that kind of stuff.
Right.
Jerry?
Yeah, I
always the
think
needle
that's one of the
small
reasons
business.
that we also, that I echoed support for some of the things that Frank was talking about, is that we should have a formalized committee here that does focus on small business. I think that would be a way to help guide you with some of those activities and also be a resource to support our small businesses within the IDA.
We did discuss possibly a committee.
Something that we should.
I think there are several members here that probably volunteer for that. So by next meeting, we will have some suggestions on how we set that up. I promise.
Also, the next item is we were invited to an ABLI event. It is a Long Island Real Estate Dinner on Monday, October 17th. It is a partnership between SIBS and the ABLI. And I just wanted to put it out there if anybody wanted tickets. There are tickets available if anybody wants to go. It's at the Heritage Club at Bethpage at the Bethpage State Park. Is anybody interested?
I'm already going.
Okay.
I'm already,
Anybody else is interested?
not in conjunction with this seat, but in conjunction with my
Okay.
other situation.
Yes. So,
Just let us know.
yeah, let me know, but soon, because I think the 6th we need to RSVP by. So
It is a very nice dinner.
Okay.
It's a very, I've been to it many times. Just about the entire real estate community goes, all brokers and everybody. So it's a very nice place.
What's the date again?
It's just a long,
17.
just a long ride.
17th, yes, at 6 p.m. The last item on the agenda is just, I want to bring to your attention that in your packet was not only the letter that we sent to Stony Brook University, but the response that we got back from Stony Brook University. So I just wanted to make sure I brought that to your attention.
Thank you. Do we know what's going on? Our concern is the third building. that was used for, vaccinations and everything. It was supposed to be the mezzanine for people coming out of the incubators. And our concern was the incubators got people in that don't belong there anymore. They've kind of grown up and they need space for new incubators.
Food incubator, Riverhead, it's,
Well-
right to the fire, the Shelley's.
Yeah.
So we've been trying to put some, I would say,
Have we had any
pressure, but
success?
awareness to a number of the people to see if they can make sure it gets used for what it's supposed to be.
Can't they get it?
So that
Have
letter,
you had any conversation with Carol Longworth about that?
no conversation, but we did share.
The letter with her?
I'm pretty sure we sent the letter. I'd have to double check, but I'm pretty sure I sent the
Because,
letter.
I mean, the building is owned by the state of New York, not owned by the university, it's owned by the state. And so that doesn't mean there's an edict, but it may be helpful in moving that process along to some degree.
I wonder whether our letter went out before Kara got that job or position.
No. Is that?
She was already there.
Yeah, she was already there.
Yeah.
But ESDC may be able to help in that regard, because one of their policies is to ensure that companies in incubators, because there's more than just one incubator in the state of New York, stay in the state of New York. That's one of their goals,
Yeah.
which makes a lot of sense. So they may be helpful in that context.
Kevin got a letter too. didn't
Yes.
Yeah, we'll see Kevin tomorrow.
he? Yes, we will.
Yes.
Yes, we will.
Yes, we will.
You're not seeing Monday.
Okay.
Yes. But I think the university may be somewhat reluctant to do it themselves, but with help from ESDC, they may be more inclined to do something there.
I was thinking of Sarah rather than Kara.
Yes, Sarah Lanston, yes.
So if anything comes out of that, let me know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Lisa,
I don't have anything else.
board members,
Yes.
council?
When is our next meeting?
Oh, our next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, October 26th.
Is that at 12:30 again? Because I know I am in the city.
I have it down as 9 AM. Was that the right
Well,
time?
I have no idea.
Felix, can you do 9?
I could do 9, yeah. I mean, Zoom, I could do 9. If we were gonna go back, if we were gonna do another, afternoon session, I could do that in person.
I know that. I know I can't do that because
Okay.
my board meeting from Tuesday runs into Wednesday morning. So at some point Wednesday morning, I will be done. So like, if you want to do afternoon, I can probably get here or at least with the car, drive it here in some regard. So I think that's, I don't want to change your schedule because of me, but I know the morning is going to be a problem.
Does 12:30 work for everybody else?
It's fine,
All right.
it's fine. I'm good.
A resolution to. Bill?
No, but he said Terrence could fill in for him.
12:30. We need a resolution to change the established meetings.
Make a motion, to change the meeting.
Thank you.
30.
Second.
Second,
All right, the vote, Mr. Callahan.
yes.
Mr. Polakowski.
Yes.
Valley.
Yes.
Mr. Grucci.
Yes.
Yes,
Going to vote yes.
and you're gonna send new invites
Yes.
out. So
I
I'll
need a
apply
motion
this
to
one.
adjourn.
So moved.
I'll come all 7.
There's a way to change something.
I think we are adjourned.
No.
Thank you.
We're done?
Yeah, we're done.
Oh.
Bye.
Bye.